The 1970s. You're probably asking yourself, what was it like? It could really be separated into three major categories: politics, the economy, and culture. The politics of the 1970s were greatly influenced by men like Presidents Nixon, Ford, and Carter. Nixon and Kissinger shared a belief of realpolitik, which is an approach to foreign policy that emphasizes national interest over moral or ethical concerns. Eventually, Nixon turned his dream of presidency into an obsession. He made his staff create an enemies list of critics that were opposed to his policies and tried to ruin their reputations. He came up with a group of former CIA and FBI agents, known as the Plumbers, to stop leaks and carry out a variety of illegal actions in the name of national security. It was all an effort to ensure Nixon's re-election, and when he started to try and cover up his dirty tricks, it all became known as Watergate because it took place at the Watergate building in Washington, D.C. After Nixon resigned for his scandals, Ford took his place and initially made a pardon for all crimes Nixon may have committed while in office. Most people thought it was a prearranged deal between the two, so that was the defining moment of Ford's presidency. He is also well known and gets credit for bills involving energy decontrol, tax cuts, and antitrust law reforms. President Carter worked hard to take over Ford's place, which everything was worth it in the long run. He inspired to make government competent and compassionate. But he was faced with the troubles of rising energy costs and mounting inflation. He was big of improving the environment, so Carter expanded the national park system, enclosing 103 acres of Alaskan land. He had to deal with the energy shortage some way, so he made a national energy policy and decontrolled domestic energy price to stimulate production. Although the area was faced with many difficulties, each president made its own impact. The economy of the 1970s centered a lot of stagflation, a term which is an economic condition in which inflation is accompanied by unemployment. What is the cause of this, you ask? Well, the major impact on inflation must have been the rising cost of oil. In August of 1971, Nixon imposed wage and price controls, also known as temporary freezes on wages, prices, and rent to slow inflation, which worked. The culture of the 1970s had its ups and downs. Apollo 13 moon landing in 1970. Apollo 13 set off for the moon, attempting to emulate the two successful landings of the previous year. At first, all went well, and the crew were soon sending back from the capsule the routine television images to which the world had so quickly become accustomed. It was when they had nearly reached their destination that the accident happened. An oxygen tank had exploded, draining the command, their model of its power and life-giving air. The astronaut had to steer their crippled ship home using only the resources of the tiny lunar model. The 1970s marked a period of time when the Sisters of the United States joined together to protest the injustice that were, and in some instances, still are ingrained into the American society. While the movement actually began in the late 1960s, membership and unity seemed to have increased drastically in the early 1970s. For example, the membership in NOW, National Organization for Women, one of the largest and most mainstream organizations of the women's movement, increased its number from 1,200 in 1967 to 48,000 in 1970. These large numbers of women divided into many subgroups, from the mainstream organization now to more radical groups like witch job inequalities, public offices, child care, abortion, the economic system, independency, the media, gender stereotypes, and sexist operations. With the introduction of heavy metal through British bands like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Led Zeppelin, and the Eagles, in the automotive business, things weren't so good. In the early 70s, the muscle car and the convertible phase was fading out, and by 1977, companies were replacing them were more compact cars that were restricted by emission control laws. Gas prices and insurance rates also went up, which helped get rid of the fast, high-risk muscle cars. Cars in the 70s also had a unique style, like the AMC Pacer or Gremlin and the Chevrolet Chevy. Shag carpet and wood paneling became popular, and cars became boxier and more rectilinear in shape. This was also the time period where front-wheel drive vehicles came out. Popular TV shows of the 70s were The Dukes of Hazzard, The Brady Bunch, and Starsky and Hutch. The popularity of westerns also decreased in the 70s. Fashion. It was a time where you could wear your short skirts, belts, high-top hair, and high-top boots. It also was a time when flare jeans came out and bodysuits that women wore, and the men also wore very flashy colors back then.